Welcome to It's Beyond the Food podcast, my sisters. I'm your host, Stephanie Dodier, and today we're going to talk about GLP-1 and what I call the non-diet approach to GLP-1. We are recording this in July 2025 in North America, and I think I can safely say that GLP-1 meds like Ozempic, Wegovy are now common and everywhere. Whatever you are for it, against it, or unsure, it's here. Now, my guess is if you're listening to this podcast or watching us on our YouTube channel, you are a coach that is probably not supporting the use of GLP-1, or you have values that do not align with GLP-1. You are a anti-diet coach, a non-diet coach, a weight neutral professional, and you are not someone who prescribe or coach people through the use of GLP-1. However, you are faced with the conversation about GLP-1 with your clients and your patients. And if you are like many of my clients, it's a very challenging experience. And it's challenging not because of the nature of GLP-1, but because of how we think about GLP-1 as professional and non-diet coaches. So the intent of this episode is to help you as someone who helps people globally liberate themselves from diet culture within a specialty or generally. How do we navigate these conversations with our clients? We're going to talk about very high level context of research, and I'm going to give you resources, my sources when it comes to GLP-1. I'm also going to give you resources for informed consent, a document that you can use with your client who are navigating making a decision around GLP-1. And I'm going to walk you through a coaching example that recently happened less than 6 weeks ago that I had with a client. So I want you to make sure that you have access to the show notes, because that's where I'm going to load up the supporting documentation for this podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, it's going to be right below the video. If you are listening on a podcast platform, if you go to the show notes section of your podcast platform, it will be there. And it will also be on the show note page on our website. And it will be linkable, downloadable. It's all free, except one resources. It's all free. So it's a pretty cool loaded episode here, filled with resources, example, coaching model that you can use in your coaching practice. So I'm going to start with some context first, and I'm going to dive into the details. So here's what I see in my field of expertise. So I am someone who trains professionals in applying the non-diet approach, a weight neutral practice to help people transition from a weight-centric approach to a weight neutral approach. And as some of you know, I've had a practice for almost 8 years supporting coaching general population. Although this practice is closed for the last 6 months, that's where my experience and also my lived experience as someone who dieted for 25 years come in. So here's what I see, and I saw it so evidently in the most recent launch of the non-diet coaching certification that happened in June 2025. And we did a survey. Some of you may have filled up the survey recently. And here's some of the quotes that I heard from you, like literally word for word. Quote, everyone's on Ozempic or Wegovy, and I don't know how to respond. I feel like I have to tiptoe around in session, trying my best to avoid so I don't have to tell them what I think of it. I feel like it's a personal attack to my belief. Clients want to lose weight, even if they believe in my anti-diet stuff, and I'm frustrated by it. Is that how you feel? I would love to hear from you. If you're listening to this and you are on your phone, go in my DMs on Instagram and tell me how you feel right now. And it's a place where I'm just gathering comment, how you feel about the expansion of weight loss drug. Here's a couple thoughts for you from my perspective as someone who hosts a community of anti-diet and non-diet professional. What I see very commonly is personal attack, right? People, my professional coaches feel like they're being attacked. They're being attacked in their value, and it's a personal attack that people have this conversation or want to have this conversation with them. And that stems from black and white thinking, meaning that it's either you are anti-diet or you're not. And you will notice that for me, I don't call my methodology the anti-diet approach because there's a lot of that mindset around the word anti-diet. It's either all or nothing. Where for me, it's a much more nuanced lens. And by having this nuanced lens, this lens of autonomy, where people are capable of making their own choice, personally, I don't feel like it's a personal attack when people want to talk to me about GLP-1 or they're considering a GLP-1. What I see instead is social conditioning. What I see instead is a validation of the work that I want to do. And let me be honest with you and straight up, avoiding as a professional or being silenced or not wanting to say anything is neither a good approach for your clients. And I heard that recently, someone that said, I just don't want to work with people who haven't stopped dieting. And I'm going to go back at this because it's one of my soapbox, and that's our work. Our work is to help people transition from diet culture, dieting restriction to a weight neutral approach to health, an intuitive eating way. So if you personally, your nervous system, your mindset isn't capable of holding that conversation in that space, what that tells me is there's work to do personally within yourself, because avoidance, silence is not the solution. Our role as professional coaches is to stay neutral within the relationship with our client. That's our role. Now, you personally in your life with your family and friends can have very black and white thinking. But bringing that in the conversation with your client is actually harmful for your client because you're not holding a space where they can find their answer. And that's our role, helping people find the answer within themselves. There's another way. Now, that other way of having a conversation about GLP-1, coaching someone through the decision of GLP-1, that other way is what I'm going to walk you through right now. And I want to be clear on a few foundational elements of this non-diet approach. Number one, it is rooted in an anti-oppression belief, an anti-oppression value system. That is one of my primary personal value and is a value that I absolutely bring in to my business and how I do business and how I practice coaching. It is rooted in the case of health in bodily autonomy. To me, it's a fundamental right of all humans to have a space for them to make their own decision about their body and their life, free from coercion, free from biased opinion. And that means I need to hold space for people who make a decision to use GLP-1 and people who make the decision to not use it without attaching value to it, because I respect their autonomy. The non-diet approach to GLP-1 is rooted in what I teach and practice, which is intersectional coaching, which acknowledges and addresses the multiple intersectional identities, social location, social culture, gender, sexual orientation, races, economical context, all the different part of the human being that leads them to make a decision. I have to hold that space for them. The fourth element that the non-diet approach is rooted in when it comes to GLP-1 is a collaborative model of coaching, which means my role in this coaching space is to collaborate with my clients, not tell them what to do, but instead build a space where we can together unroot or pull from within them the right decision for them in this moment. That's what collaborative. I often describe it as a dance that I do with my client. We dance, we collaborate together. And it's also rooted in the methodology that I use to coach people, which is called cognitive behavior coaching, which address not the behavior, in this case, not the decision of using GLP-1 or not, but instead the reason, the why, the beliefs behind the decision to or not to use GLP-1. So this is what formed what I'm about to teach you today and what I teach within the non-diet coaching certification. Before I go to some facts about it, I want to give you some context on weight loss drug in case it's not in your space of awareness. If you have taken my class called Women, Body, and Power, which is how I teach the intersection between diet culture and feminism, you know that the early traces of diet culture dates back to 1880s. That's when we can have historical evidence of diet culture manipulating women's body, dieting, restricting food. In fact, the first weight loss diet book came out in the 1880s. And very shortly, within the inception of diet culture, the first diet book came the use of some form of drugs to facilitate weight loss. And the first trace we can see is in early 1900s when animal-based thyroid hormone complex were given to people to help them lose weight with very disturbing side effects. That was shut down. In the 1930s came DNP, in the 1940s, amphetamine, which came at a very high risk of addiction. That was stopped. 1970s came the rise of what's called appetite suppressants, which again had a boom, and then it came crashing down because of the serious health issue that people started to encounter, and the drug was pulled off. In the 1980s came PPA, which again was pulled off in the early 2000s. The drug was pulled off the market because of the high risk of stroke. And then if you're old enough, you've lived through that. Fen-phen. In the 1990s, that was a famous combo of two drugs that was called fen-phen, and it was extremely popular. I remember hearing my aunts talking about fen-phen, some of my aunts being on fen-phen, me wanting to be on fen-phen until my mom shut it down. And as it happened with all the other weight loss drug, got shut down in 1997 because of the side effect and the risk associated with it. In the 2000s, GLP came to the market, but not as a weight loss drug. GLP was a drug for type 2 diabetes, which a side effect that was observed from the patient who were using it for type 2 was weight loss. So in 2014, that's the first time that the FDA approved a GLP-1 drug for chronic weight management. That was in 2014. It wasn't something that was popular because, again, it was for a specific health condition within a specific context. It wasn't a weight loss drug. But then everything changed in 2021 when Wegovy was approved by the FDA as a weight loss drug. And here we are today in 2025, probably seeing the peak of this newest weight loss drug called GLP-1, right? Under a different brand name, but we'll call it for today GLP-1. But the reason why I'm sharing the history of this is that you can put it in context in your own mind and for your client. This is not the first one. And based on what happened in the past, most weight loss drugs, when on the market and then research on longer periods of time, are being withdrawn from the market because of the side effect of it. And right now in 2025, the GLP-1 drugs haven't been on the market long enough for us to notice serious side effects and have any conversation right now about being pulled out of the market. So we're at the peak of it right now. What's going to happen in 5, 10, 15 years from now? Who knows? We can have this discussion again then, but for now, it is marketed for weight loss and it's happening. So how do we deal with that as non-diet practitioner? I want you to be aware of research around GLP-1. This is part of your homework as a professional, a health coach, a nutritionist, is to be aware of the research, but non-biased research. And let's talk about that for a minute. I want you to be aware of the history, which we did. Now I want you to be aware of non-diet research. Now, I'm going to make my claim here. I am not an expert in the field of research, but I have a resource for you. Her name is Reagan Chaston. Reagan is specialized in looking at research from a weight neutral lens. She has an expertise, she has degrees in research methodology that allows her to have a unique lens. So I highly recommend that you actually support Reagan's work because we need to support her so that she can practice her expertise and be able to look at bias research, because the truth is GLP-1 research at this point is 90% biased. What do I mean by that? All the research and the claim that we see that our client here is from research created, initiated, supported, facilitated by drug manufacturer. And by people who actually are paid by drug manufacturer to look at the drug efficacy. So that's what we call bias research. Reagan comes in, evidently not paid by weight loss manufacturer. She's neutral. She has no payment from any drug manufacturer, and look at the data and pulls it apart. So she has a Substack. I am a member of a community through Substack, $8 a month. And I support her work so she can continue to look at bias research from an unbiased lens and give us a language to be able to talk about, in this case, GLP-1 with our client. And the information I'm going to share right now is from her work. In the show notes, I've put in the link for you to join her Substack. And also, I want to mention the Association for Size, Diversity, and Health, otherwise known as in the past Health at Every Size. It's a professional association, and they had this amazing training at the beginning of the year 2025. I'm pretty sure they recorded it, and it's available. It's a 3-part training for Health at Every Size practitioner on GLP-1. So I've attended that. And probably if you join the association, you can have this training as well. What I'm about to share from a science perspective is not a rant of anti-GLP-1. It's more about forming you, putting information in your brain so you can help your client make an informed decision. So here's some of the key research highlights when we take the bias out of it. Yes, GLP-1 does induce weight loss, and that weight loss will typically plateau after 1 year. The weight loss depends on the drug manufacturer. It will go from 8 to 21% body weight loss over a 68 period, which will average, if you take 220-pound person, that will average a 33-pound weight loss. That is a fact. That is true. However, the weight loss plateau after 1 year, this is from a study from Wegovy, and the maximum trial research as of today, July 2025, is a 2-year trial. Meaning that we do not have long-term data as to what happens to people after the 2-year period. And we're talking about people here, let's be clear, on people who are continuously using GLP-1. So there is an average of 8 to 21% weight loss over 1 year period. And in order to maintain that weight loss, people have to continue to use the medication. And that's probably one of the most potent piece of information that you will give to your client when they want to talk about GLP-1, because that's not claimed loudly by drug manufacturer. They only put forward, obviously, the weight loss, but they do not explain clearly to people, boldly, that they have to continue to take the medication in order to sustain the weight loss. What we don't know is that even if you continue to take the weight loss medication over a 2-year period, do you maintain the weight loss or is the weight coming back up? The longest study, 2 years, shows a beginning of a weight gain back even on medication. But again, it's not long enough over a 5-year period for us to see a full trend. Another stat that's very clear is that 74% of people using all the GLP-1 experience side effects, mainly nausea and diarrhea. And also there is some serious side effects that are more advanced condition like kidney issue, suicidal ideation, intestinal blockage, although more rare. But 74% of people will have some side effect of taking the medication. Weight loss drugs have a strong history of being pulled off the market, as I mentioned on the segment about the history of weight loss drug, when long-term evidence are collected. And this is important for people to know, again, walking them through the history to know that it hasn't been on the market long enough as a weight loss drug for us to understand the safety under long-term usage for general population. What will happen in 5 or 10 years from now, we'll see. The other popular claim around GLP-1 is that GLP-1 improve cardio metabolic health. Yes, it is true that there is short-term health improvement that are facilitated due to the caloric restriction, not the medication itself. Meaning that if people restrain caloric intake and lose weight, they will have the same cardiometabolic health improvement short term as people on GLP-1. Another popular claim that people will ask you about is GLP-1 reduce what is known as, quote, food noise. The thing is, there is one piece of research that's extremely limited around what is food noises. But what we do know is that the restriction that people do in their before life to GLP-1. So most people that will go to GLP-1 are people that have dieted using food restriction, that are currently dieting for food restriction, and it's quote, not working. They're experiencing this constant obsession about food, which they describe as food noise. And what we do know from limited research like the Minnesota starvation study is that when people are hungry, they are experiencing food noise in order to induce the behavior of eating. Like it's a survival mechanism from the human system in order to survive. And that seemed to be quieted down by the GLP-1. But again, as soon as people stop the medication, for whatever reason, the food noise come back. Another claim that you may hear is that GLP-1, quote, treats food addiction. The first thing to know here is that food addiction is not a medically recognized diagnosis, doesn't exist. It's an expression that people use to describe what we just talked about, which is food noise. So suppressing hunger doesn't resolve what drives the addictive behavior that people have towards food. It just silences the biological signal while using the medication. And when the medication is stopped, poof, it comes right back because we haven't addressed the root causes. So those are the highlight of what you will find on Reagan's blog. The other piece of documentation I absolutely want you to download from the show note is the patient/client informed consent document created by medical student for size inclusivity. There's an association in America of medical students that are weight neutral approach to health, and they've created this phenomenal document that is client facing forward, meaning it's in very lay term, that shows the highlight of the current research of GLP-1 and also question that they encourage people to explore to make an informed decision about GLP-1. And these are the questions that these medical students use in practice to help people make a decision about GLP-1. So the link is in the show note. Go download this and you will see all the most popular claim about GLP-1 are explained and also linked with the research in this document. What do we do with all of this as a coach? To me, the conversation around GLP-1 is a doorway. It is the gateway for us to help our client see what is truly behind their desire to lose weight. So I want you to think of the desire to lose weight as a symbol, the query about GLP-1 as a gateway for you to have a much deeper conversation with clients or potential clients. And to me, that's pure goal. And that's what actually going to help people change their life either now or in the future. I have been using the non-diet approach now for almost 9 years. And still to this day, 9 years later, I have people just recently in the non-diet coaching certification. One of my students is a dietitian who encountered my work 6 years ago. She encountered my work, started listening to the podcast, and then I started to put thoughts in her brain and ask questions, and she started reflecting. And she left my world for whatever reason. And then in June, she signed up for the non-diet coaching certification because she was ready. And she told me that I planted seeds in her mind 6 years ago, and she started to work with clients differently, started to observe different behavior, and then she finally made the decision to change her practice now. That's what I mean by GLP-1, the desire to lose weight, is the gateway, the doorway. It is our chance for us to plant the seeds for people that may be able to make the decision today, but it may be later. If you want to hear more about how to talk about weight safely with people, go to the last episode 428, and that's all we talked about. What I want to walk you through right now is an example of a conversation I had with someone just 6 to 8 weeks ago who was considering GLP-1. We'll call her Julie for the moment to keep her identity secret, but she was diagnosed with prediabetes. She went to her doctor, came back, got the diagnosis of prediabetes, and her doctor said, word for word, quote, "I give you 6 months to get your act together on your own, and after that, it's GLP-1, end of quote." She came back from that appointment absolutely terrified. Like her life was about to change for the worse. I don't want to say her life was about to end, but she said, I felt like I was about to make a life or death choice, and I had to lose weight. Now, what's interesting about Julie, she's 51 years old. This is information I found through conversation, through coaching conversation with Julie. So I asked her to tell me about her history of dieting, and come to find out she had been dieting since the age of 13. 3 years ago at 48, she encountered my work through my podcast again and gradually stopped dieting. She did it on her own. She didn't join any of my programs. She listened to my podcast. She read the intuitive eating book, stopped restricting food, started to work on her body image. But then 8 to 12 weeks ago, she had this doctor appointment, and then it all came back. And that's when she finally reached out to me. And her biggest fear, when I said, what is really terrifying to you that you feel like your life's about to end? She said, word for word, I am terrified to end up like my mother. I'm like, okay, tell me more. My mother has diabetes. She has high blood pressure. She has cholesterol. She takes a bunch of pills every day. She's not mobile, and she sits in her chair all day long. So right away, her brain, like the doctor created an environment of all or nothing with his words. She reacted in all or nothing. She reacted about, I just have a choice, either to live or to die, or end up, quote, like my mother. She only had 2 choices, and her entire body went in survival mode. When she reached out to me and we did a consultation, she was at the peak of it. She was highly emotional. There was a lot of tears. She was petrified of becoming like her mother. Her life was ending. She has a good job. She's financially safe. She travels, and she thought right away, all of this will end, and I'm going to end up like my mom within the next 2 years because of this prediabetes diagnosis. So listen to her, establish the real reason why I showed it to her. And then I said, so tell me, what do you know about GLP-1? You're wanting me to help you make a decision. What do you know? She said, I know it's a weight loss drug. You lose weight. It prevents heart condition. It reverses type 2 diabetes. She said, it's a great drug. I'm like, oh, okay. So who gave you that information? Like, where did you go to get the information that it guarantees weight loss, it prevents heart disease, reverse type 2 diabetes? Number one, my doctor. And number two, when I came back home from that appointment, I jumped on ChatGPT and I asked ChatGPT the information, the question. So I take a deep breath. I'm like, oh, okay. So what you're saying to me is that the information that fueled your research was biased. She said, what do you mean? And then that's when I went into the conversation and explaining to her bias and non-biased information, that most of the research, like just what I told you guys, most of the research is done by drug manufacturer and people who are paid by drug manufacturer. I gave her all the information that I had in this first part of the podcast. And I said, so most of your information is biased. Would you like me to walk you through non-biased information? She said, well, yeah, like, absolutely. Now that you explain that to me, like, I want to make a decision that's unbiased. I'm like, great, because I work online. I sent to her the link for the informed consent from the medical student for size inclusivity link. And together we looked at it, and we look at the research, we look at the non-biased interpretation of the research, and then her world come crashing down again. And then she started crying again. I'm like, what is happening? What is going on for you to have this highly emotional moment again? She said, Stephanie, I thought that I had the solution. But now you told me that's not even the solution. So what am I going to do if GLP-1's not the solution? It's not going to help me avoid becoming my mother. What am I going to do? I'm like, are you saying that you want me to present you with another alternative? She's like, absolutely, I want to. So we went into the other alternative, which is weight neutral approach to health. So here's a couple things that I told her that I want to point out to all of you. Number one, we went to the roots. I'm like, so you're afraid of becoming like your mom. You've been dieting for almost 40 years. You really don't like your body. Like, you've got some body dissatisfaction. So the first place we need to start is working on the body image dissatisfaction. We need to get you to a place where you are neutral to your body so that, and this is critical here, so that you can engage in health promoting behavior. One other thing I didn't say to you, as I was gathering information, I asked her how she was doing with health promoting behavior, like movement and intuitive eating and gentle nutrition, and it wasn't doing good. It was on and off, on and off, on and off, which is typical of most people. Changing behavior is hard. I'm like, so we got to set the ground through body image coaching for you to be in a neutral state around your body so that you can have respect for your body, so that you can engage in health promoting behavior for the rest of your life. Not just on and off, but actually consistent for the rest of your life. And that's behavioral change. And that's what we do in my world using cognitive behavior coaching. We help people change their behavior. But for you, we got to go step back, which is most of my specialty which is body satisfaction and setting up the tone for body respect. And then we engage in behavioral change like movement, eating to satisfaction, gentle nutrition, sleep, and cognitive behavior coaching is the gold standard for behavioral change. And the third element that we need to focus on is mental and emotional health. There's obviously a lot of trauma. There's obviously a lot of past experience and emotion that are pinned up in you that have to be worked through. And that's what I do. That's what I help people do through cognitive behavior coaching and nervous system coaching, where I help you learn a way for you to work on your mental health, work on your emotional well-being, so you no longer have to use coping behavior in order to regulate yourself. So what do you think? And if you've listened to 4 of 28, that's pretty much the 5 steps that I walked you through. And I left her with some questions. I didn't expect her to make a decision right then and there. Left her with some decision, right? And it's what I call quality decision making. That's a framework that we help people make decisions with. 3 questions. I'm going to leave you with those 3 questions as well. So you may want to write that down. They're not in the show notes, but you may want to write them down. I left her with choices. I said, this is up to you to make the decision. You do not have to obey to your doctor. You live in a world of bodily autonomy. You need to reset that relationship with your doctor from a place of you are in power of your body, not him. From that place of power, there's a next step, a choice you need to make. You have two choices, using the GLP-1 or not. And if not, then we need to engage in behavioral change. Here's the trick question. Which choice brings you closer to who you want to be, even if it doesn't work? And that's the key here. A quality decision is not anchored on getting the result that you want, but instead making a choice that is aligned with who you want to become and, in this case, the life you want to live. So which choice bring you closer, GLP-1 or behavioral changes of who you want to become, even if it doesn't work? 2, what is the best case scenario in 3 years from now? And this is very important, specifically around the choice with GLP-1. What is the best case scenario in 3 years from now with each option? And it's important that you consider that if you do go with GLP-1, the weight loss and the health changes you're going to see, you have to be able to maintain GLP drug for that period financially. Are you able financially to take this medication for the rest of your life in order for you to maintain the benefit that you potentially can experience? Question number 3, what would you choose between GLP-1 or behavioral changes if in each cases you could be equally happy or healthy? Let's imagine that you get the same result in both places. Which choice would you make? I want you to think about those questions. I made her write it down, and I made her reflect on those questions and make her decision from this place. If you stuck with me walking you through this kind, that's how you can have educated, informed, autonomy-driven conversation around GLP-1. Now, I want to address something else before we end the podcast. It's something that I hear quite often as a professional. Everyone around me is deep into weight loss and GLP-1. If that's you, that as a business owner, a professional, a coach, your audience is filled with people who have a deep desire to lose weight, that are dieting, that are or want or consider GLP-1, this is going to be a business conversation, folks. You are probably targeting the wrong audience. So I'm going to talk in terms of TTM, which is a trans-theoretical model of change, which, by the way, TTM is the most widely studied behavioral model in health psychology. It's the most recognized, established roadmap for behavioral changes. So obviously, that's what we use within the non-diet coaching certification. There's 6 stages to people changing their behavior, in our case, around weight loss, dieting, food restriction. There's 6 stages of change, and I'm going to name them to you quickly in case you're not aware at all. Contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance, and what we call relapse or recycling. So if currently in your audience, you have people who are dieting, interested, or on GLP-1, your audience is in stage 1, pre-contemplation, or contemplation around diet culture. If they're in pre-contemplation, they're knee-deep in diet culture. They believe all the foundation of diet culture, thinner is better, thinner is healthier, you should be able to restrict food. And they're not even considering for a minute leaving diet culture. Stage 2, contemplation, they are still knee-deep in diet culture, and they are aware of what you do, non-diet coaching, but they're not interested. Hence why When they saw GLP-1 come in, they're like, oh my God, finally, the way to lose weight permanently. They saw it and it landed on them and stuck with them because they're not ready. There's nothing bad about them. They're just in stage 2 of changing their relationship to food, body, and health. They're not ready to consider your options. So your messaging, your marketing is targeting the wrong people. Hence why you're surrounded with people who want to talk about GLP-1. So it's a marketing issue. It's not that the entire world is made up of people who want to be on GLP-1. It's because your marketing isn't targeting the right people. Your marketing needs to be targeting people in the stage 3 and stage 4 of the model of change, the preparation stage, which is people that were knee-deep in diet culture. They now don't want to be in diet culture. They've made that choice. They perhaps are still dieting. They're still restricting food. Pretty sure they do to some degree. They may think they're not, but they are. And they see your approach has something they are willing to consider, something they are willing to do, perhaps even doing right now on their own terms. Preparation is the stage where you want to target your marketing messages. And stage 4, obviously, action. People who are looking for someone to support them in leaving diet culture. You were considering listening to this podcast episode and you said, whatever, like everybody wants GLP-1, so I'm just going to quit my business, which, by the way, was something that one of the survey responder that I did in July said, quote unquote, I'm quitting my business. There's just too many people who want to lose weight. That was a marketing issue. I didn't send her a response. I'm just saying in my head right away, that's a marketing issue. Like she was targeting the wrong people. So I want you to take this into consideration. So if you want to learn how to coach GLP-1 with the level of confidence that I displayed in walking you through the example with Julie and practicing marketing in a way where you will target people who are ready to make the change, that's what I do inside of the non-diet coaching certification. That's the kind of coaching I teach you to do. That's the kind of business I teach you to build. So you can host a safe space for people to make an informed consent around GLP-1 and set the tone for bodily autonomy. Right now, your next step would be to join our waitlists. So if you go to stephaniedodier.com/waitlist, put your name on the waitlist, and the next cohort will start in October 2025. It was a pleasure being with you, my sister, and I'll see you on the next episode. Want to coach behaviors, not bodies? Learn the mindset tool and the method that create real changes? Join the waitlist for the next cohort of the non-diet coaching certification at stephaniedodier.com/waitlist. That's where the real training begins. And I'll see you on the other side, my sisters.